perfect time to be alone. Kids distracted, wifey on the phone. Slip out the back door with my car keys. If I don't leave now, someone will try and find me. It's different this time right now, solo. I have the perfect plan, nowhere to go. Cruising down the highway, not doing more than 70. So the police mind there's enough bother me.
Welcome to the If You Cook I'll Clean podcast. I'm your host, Eli Breeden. Today we have something special in store for you guys. This young lady I actually met at the Charlotte Black Film Festival. She is a creative. She's an entrepreneur. She's an author. She's also a filmmaker. She has over 32 years in the TV and film industry. She's seen many changes, but still not enough in the UK to effectively reflect black and brown artists as successful creators. She hails from Northwest London. She's also a mother, she's an educator, and she's a wife as well. She owns a production company called KW Productions, which was set up especially as a platform for black creatives of African and Caribbean descent who are often underrepresented in the industry. This is in order to ensure both cast and crew are reflected well, both behind and in front of the cameras or on stage, catering to the specific needs of black, African, and Caribbean people. Black stories and life perspectives, including general cultural perspectives on script writing, directing, and blocking of scenes, etc., taking into account requirements that often go unmet through ignorance of those wearing the planning producer hats within pre-production. Additionally, for those said individuals sent by God to develop their creative gifts and talents in a safe environment conducive for growth. Welcome, guys, all the way from Northwest London, Kadine Thompson. How are you, young lady?
I am very well. Thank you so much. And thank you for such a wonderful introduction.
Absolutely. I would have it no other way. So tell us what you've been up to since the last we've seen each other. What projects do you have going on, or what have you been doing since the last time we've seen each other?
Well, where do I start? Since leaving Charlotte Black Film Festival, where we met, I have been involved in theatre productions, providing the hair and makeup provision for that production in our Theatreland Central London. I've been educating individuals as well. I've been doing some writing. It's all happening, Eli. It's all happening here.
That's great. That's great. Before we actually start talking about the book, tell them the name of your project, the movie as well as the book, and we'll actually have those, the book and the movie in the description below. But tell us a little bit about your project.
So the name of the book is Saved, Sanctified, Single, and Sexual. And here is a copy of the book.
Okay.
Just for your viewers to see.
Absolutely.
And this book was published in 2017. And I then went on to write and adapt it as a script. And then it became a TV series. So it's a 6-part TV series. And we had our first US premiere at the Charlotte Black Film Festival in June of this year. And it's doing very, very well so far. So yeah, I won't say too much about it, but there's a story to be told, and I'm telling it through this 6-part TV drama.
That's great. That's great. We're actually going to get into that because I have a few questions for you regarding your project, because what struck me to be interesting is the title, you know,
Yes.
Saved, Sanctified, Single, and Sexual, My Journey. Um,
Yes.
I think, and I'll save some questions for later, but I think for most people who actually hear that title, you know, it will strike their interest, especially those that are in the church or, you know, have had their, or some convictions, you know, in the past as well as the
Yes.
present. And I think this book will actually help, you know, people navigate through those particular circumstances. So I'll reserve some of those questions for later. So you did read the book If You Cook, I'll Clean, correct?
I did. Yes, I did.
Great. So tell me what. Give me your honest opinion about, you know, the book. And before you answer that question, um, I do have a question because there may be some cultural differences, or maybe it's not, and maybe we can talk about that later. But um, there may be some cultural differences as it relates to you being in London and your experiences and how individuals interact. I do want to kind of get into that, but just tell me, what did you think about the book overall?
I think the book is very insightful. It's really good to be able to hear the unprecedented, unadulterated thoughts in the minds of men, black men in particular. And you just touched upon whether there are cultural differences with men in the US and here in London, UK. I would say there may be some slight cultural differences, but on the whole, a black man is a black man. And from my own experiences, what I read in your book is not dissimilar to what maybe I've heard a girlfriend say about their man, or what I personally have experienced myself with encountering black men. So very, very insightful, very honest, very truthful, very transparent. And I think that that's what we need as a conversation starter to begin with. We need men and women to be honest with each other.
Oh, great. So do you, from your perspective, do you see this as a book that's universal?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. The stories between men and women, I don't feel that they are dissimilar no matter the culture that you're in or the culture that you come from.
Great, great, great. So, um, one of the stories that um, is in the book, I don't have one necessarily from a Christian perspective, but I do have a story in the book about, you know, a minister or a preacher who is trying to find that balance between, you know, their life as well as their personal life. And one of the things that I do remember in the book is, you know, some pastors find it very difficult to try to manage, you know, their home life because, you know, they find themselves giving so much of themselves to either the congregation or to the community. It kind of takes away from the family. And in some instances, you know, the wife, you know, will feel somewhat slighted because sometimes they
Mm,
feel like, you know, you're giving more to everybody else, and you're depleting yourself. You have nothing more to give when it comes to me and my family. So let me ask you this: is that something that could be universal as well? Is that something that potentially you've seen before or you can relate to personally?
absolutely. I myself am an active part of ministry. I'm not a pastor, but I am an active part of ministry and have been for many years now. And I think that you have to strike a balance. You know, we are supposed to take care of home, home is our first ministry before anything or anyone else. So yes, we are required by, the ministry that we're serving under, but we have to remember that home is our first ministry, and so therefore, no husband or wife should be or feel like they're in competition with the congregation or with, the women's ministry. In my case, the relationships are very different. What you're giving to a church member or a congregation, or that sister over there or that brother over there, is totally different to what you're giving your spouse. There is no competition, because your spouse is your first ministry, and then whatever you're doing unto God out there is a separate entity. And I think if we understand that, then we can get the balance, strike the chord, with the balance, and get it right.
I'll share with you. Were you finished? I'm sorry.
No. That's absolutely fine. Once both parties understand, then I think we'll be plain sailing. We'll be okay then.
So I'll share you something that happened to me many years ago. It was probably maybe even during high school, or maybe a little bit after high school. I had an experience where I was in a situation or relationship, and the young lady that I was in a relationship with, she was convicted, meaning she had gotten saved, and she wanted to start moving a little bit differently and changing her life around. And it was honest. I think some people may use certain things as an excuse to escape a relationship, but I saw it from my own eyes. And for me on that side of it, and I'm speaking and I'm sharing this with you because this is what your project is about, the movie and the book.
Yes.
So when she had that conviction and she wanted to start moving a little bit differently in the relationship, she exited the relationship, meaning that she broke up with me. And when I tell you that, most guys probably won't admit it, but I can. I think it builds character, but it crushed me. I mean, and when you're immature, when you're young, and especially immature in the Lord, let's say that, and you're in a space where you feel like you're upset, but you can't be too upset. You know what I mean? It's different from if you're having a breakup and that individual breaks up with you to enter into another relationship, or you find out they were dealing with somebody. That's different. How do you deal with somebody? I'm sorry. How do you deal with the situation when somebody breaks up with you because their new boyfriend is the Lord?
Well, there's not much competition there, is there?
So how do you honestly, how do you navigate through those kind of situations? And I'm asking because that's what your book is about, that's what your movie is about, and you tell the story based on those experiences that you're trying to reflect, or that you want the audience to be able to understand. So how does someone on the receiving end of a breakup because of a conviction, or because somebody is getting saved, how does someone navigate through that kind of situation?
You touched on somebody's maturity level in the Lord and in Christ, and I think for the most part it is about the spiritual level that the person is on, or that the couple are on. Being in Christ is a very individual and personal experience, And so therefore we all come in at different levels, and whether we rise or not to another level is dependent on how much of the word we're taking in and how much of the word we are understanding. The Bible says, study to show thyself approved. And so therefore, if we're not studying the word, we're going to remain down there on milk. But the more we study the word, we leave the milk behind, and we start to eat the meat of the word and take it into our spirit. And so therefore, if one entity or one part of that couple is still on milk and the other one has risen to the meat level, that's where you get the disparity, and that's where it becomes a very crushing experience. However, if that person is empowered and encouraged in the Lord through the word, through the washing of the word, then they can start to gain an understanding. They may not like the reality of the situation, but they come to a level of maturity and maturation in the word that they're able to understand it and see things from a biblical perspective as to why they are not to continue, in sexual relations before marriage. And that's how it's dealt with.
So one of the things that I noticed was in the trailer that I watched, wasn't able to see the film because I believe your film was shown in a different theater other than the one that I was moderating. So,
Yes.
and I know the film isn't out right yet.
It's not out
Okay.
publicly yet in the public domain, no.
Okay, so in the trailer, I noticed that once that female got, the revelation, and maybe I'm not phrasing it correctly, and you can correct me when you respond, but when she was getting that revelation, she still had some struggles, even during that time, and she was trying to or attempting to figure out, her way in a sense in the Lord. So.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, when you're, and not you per se, but when someone is being convicted and they're trying to find or navigate this new way of life, how do they find that balance? Meaning, so I'm still, partially having these feelings and I'm trying to manage these feelings, but, the other part of me is moving in a completely different direction. How do you balance that, or how does someone balance that?
I think, as I said previously, it's coming into the knowledge of what the Bible is saying to us. The instruction of how we navigate through life is in the Word. It's in the Bible. And so as you eat more of the Word, as you take in more of the word, you are better equipped of how to deal with life in general, not just that particular situation, but the challenges that arise in life. Something that may have worried you 5 years before, once you eat more of the word, actually, God has already proven himself to you. So that thing doesn't bother you anymore. That thing can arise, but it no longer bothers you because you've overcome it in the knowledge of the word by using the word as a tool. We put on the whole armor of God, and so when you put on the armor of God and you overcome, you're victorious in the face of adversity. The next time a challenge arises, you remember, you cast your mind back. And so as you grow in the Lord and as you come into further knowledge, that's how you would deal with it. Yes, the challenges still come. It doesn't mean because you've suddenly saved, you're born again, you're in Christ, the challenges go away. Absolutely not. If anything, they're coming faster and more furious into your life, as a test. But once you get over that test then becomes your testimony. You can say, okay, well, God, my back was against the wall in that thing before, but now I've overcome that. And so I know I can overcome this. So you keep trying, and you may fall by the wayside, but you pick yourself back up, you dust yourself off, You speak to God, you build a relationship with Him, and then you keep moving forward. He's not going to condemn you for falling. You just keep moving forward, and that's how it's dealt with.
So I can only speak from a male's perspective. That's the only perspective, not the only, but as it relates to gender and as it relates
Yes.
specifically to this conversation, I can only contribute from that aspect from a male's perspective. So from a male's perspective, right, if a woman has those convictions and she's moving closer to God, but they're still in some respects having sex, and she suddenly, or not suddenly, but she's making that transition into not having sex with her boyfriend, I would assume, because if they were married, obviously it wouldn't be a conviction.
And
But right,
yeah.
but if she was still having sex with that guy, but slowly winging him off and making that transition, how does a man deal with that? Because I'll tell you, it's quite, um, there are contradictions, because the guy is saying, well, you're claiming that you're saved, or you're claiming that you're moving closer to the Lord, but you're still sleeping with me. How does a man deal with that during that transitional phase? How does he deal with that? Because for any man, I'll tell you, you know, especially if they were dealing with the woman for quite some time, they're not going to be so happy about it. So
Absolutely not.
how does a man deal with that? And I have a follow up question after you answer that as well.
Okay. I think it's about honesty and transparency, between the couple. Um, the man is not going to be happy. Even the woman, she may not be happy either. She's come to the Lord, she's come into the knowledge of what the Bible is saying, and suddenly this is also a challenge for her as well. Let's not forget that this is all very new to her as well. So as she's getting the revelation, she's sharing that now with her partner. And it's about being transparent, it's about being open, it's about having these open discussions. So it's not about her suddenly going with brute force and saying, right, this is it, this is the end, we're never going to sleep together again until you decide to marry me. It's about her gently going, speaking to her partner on a level that she knows he will understand, choosing her moments correctly as well. If you know your partner, in this case it was, a woman coming to a man. If you know your boyfriend, you know your partner, you will know when to raise certain things with him. That's not to say that it's going to be an easy conversation, but have the conversation anyway. Communicate. But don't just cut things off. You have to be able to communicate, and communicate well with one another, and communicate with respect and understanding, because it's a challenge, as much a challenge for her as it is also for him. And as I said, there will be slip ups. There will be times where they will both set their mind and say, okay, well, we're going to abstain, you know, but it's about them carving out how they do that. Does that mean that we're not going to kiss anymore? We're not going to French kiss anymore? We're not going to hold each other in a certain way anymore? What does that mean? Does it mean that when it gets to certain hours, I'm going to leave and go home so that we don't fall back into those temptations? Put some parameters and some boundaries in place that will help.
Do you mind sharing with us, because we're in the United States? What is French kissing? I'm just joking around with you. So you answered my question, but let me frame it a different way. So two people are in a relationship. One has the conviction.
Yes.
While they're navigating through that conviction or through that situation, is the ultimate goal to bring the other person up to where they may be in their conviction or in their maturity level with as it relates to God? So that is the ultimate plan to be married.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes. Most certainly within this script of Say Sanctified, Single and Sexual, yes. The character, Sherelle, who is the lead character, yes, she most definitely wanted to marry her partner. She was very much in love with him. He was very much in love with her. And the goal was marriage. But prior to being a Christian, becoming a Christian, it was never at the forefront of their agenda. You know, they were just happily in this relationship, doing what grown people do, you know. And once she had that conviction, once she had that revelation of what the Bible was saying, yes, she most definitely, she didn't know how to approach the situation at first. And, you know, she then went forward and spoke to him, and it wasn't handled very well, in the sense that, you know, he didn't know how to take it. He was quite, felt quite rejected and quite upset about the situation. He didn't realize that when she became a Christian, it would actually change the dynamic of their relationship. And so, therefore, it is essential that conversations happen. And that's the way that they're going to overcome, by being able to communicate. Yeah.
Right, right. And when you were, you know, describing some of the scenes in the movie, a thought came to mind, right? Because I've heard of certain situations that have happened with individuals who were in the church, right? And let me be honest with you. Like I'm in the church, right? But I don't call myself, you know, I'm not religious, and maybe I'm not saying it correctly, but I'm not one of these over religious people who carries a Bible around and spewing the word and telling everybody they're going to hell, because
Mm.
you know I have a lot of growing to do as well. But this story just came to mind, right? I've heard, can't say I know anyone personally, but I've heard of individuals meeting in the church, right? They decide they want to get married. And this is completely off script, so just brace yourself just a little bit. But I've heard that um, this particular story, these individuals met in the church. They decided that they were going to wait until after they get married to have a sexual encounter. Okay, does that make sense so far?
Yes. Yes.
Once they got married, once they had the sexual encounter, the female was not pleased at all, because based on what the experience was, it was the complete opposite of what she expected, right?
Okay.
Um, and she was not satisfied at all. How do individuals navigate through those circumstances, either prior to getting married, in the engagement, as well as post marriage, when it comes to that area? This is what your project is about. This is what your book is about. So we're labeling you as the expert here. So
Please don't do that.
no, it's too late. It's too late. So how does someone navigate through that? They find out after, you know, they marry someone. You know, I can't be satisfied with this.
I think that a couple can learn to be satisfied with one another. You know, it's just like, let's use cooking for example.
Okay.
Okay. So if a couple come together and somebody likes their rice a little bit softer than the other person's used to cooking, you would teach them how you like it, right?
Okay.
If you're making a cup of tea, like we like to drink tea in the UK,
Okay.
um, and somebody likes their tea with milk in it, but not too much milk,
Right.
you would teach them exactly how you like it. So you would keep teaching them until they are in a position to make it satisfactory for you. And I think it would be the same with sex as well. If you were unsatisfied, God made man and woman to fit together, in lovemaking. And I believe that, you can orchestrate and teach one another what pleases you.
Is that your final answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that's your final answer, that's your final answer. I don't want to run you off. I'll tailor my next question that I was going to ask you for when you come back the next time, because I think that you're right in some aspects, but I think, and I'm going back to a situation that I heard about, not that I particularly know of, but it was none of those things that you mentioned was even a possibility to be able to make her satisfied. None of those things. What does someone do in those instances? Do they continue to pray
Therapy,
about it? Therapy?
therapy, perhaps couples therapy to
Okay.
discuss these things openly and to try and find a solution. I don't believe that, a couple should just throw the towel in because it's perhaps maybe not what they've been used to in the past. Or, I mean, let's face it, the Bible says that we shouldn't be having sex before marriage, and it's for that very reason, so that we don't have a comparison
But can you at least can you
as
can
well.
you can you look at it? Is that possible? I mean, can you take a peek at it to see if it's conducive? I mean, is
That's
that
that that is to do with the individual, the couple. That's a decision that they would have to make.
okay? Because you're in a certain ministry within the church. So I mean, do you get these kind of questions or no?
Oh, there are definitely conversations,
Oh, okay,
yeah, within the women's ministries. Yes,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
and this is why also God instructed me to write what I've written, because of the challenges that people are facing. That from a woman's perspective, what women are facing, these things are not being spoken about on a Sunday morning on the pulpit. So open, frank discussions need to happen, and they need to happen in a safe environment. So yes, most definitely these things do come up, and we do need to have these discussions. Yes.
Okay, great. So you are from Northwest London, correct?
Yeah.
How long have you were you born there? Were you raised there?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, I
great,
was
great.
born and raised in,
Yeah,
in Northwest
I thought
London.
that's what I remember. So I'm asking you that because I'm just curious to know when you were in the States, because you've been in the States from what I remember on a few occasions, correct?
Many times.
Yeah,
I
I
have a
thought
lot
so.
of family in the States, so yes.
I thought so.
Yeah.
So are there culturally any cultural differences that you've noticed? We're not. It's not for debate. It's not to create any hysteria or any of that. But have you noticed any cultural differences from um, women there and women here in the States that are noticeable that you notice? And we're
I
not
think
we're not being negative. It's nothing to.
no, not at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
No. When we were younger, when I say younger, maybe 20 years or so, when we were younger, it was a case of all the guys like American women because they're more forthright. They say what they mean and they mean what they say. I think ladies here have caught up with that now. They're very, the ladies here in London, they know what they want and they go after what they want. They don't kind of hold back on whatever it is that they're looking for. So in terms of a cultural difference, I would say yes, there is a slight cultural difference, but the ladies here now are much more forthright as well. Maybe that's just come with maturity as well. Because we're now older women. My circle, we're now older women. And so our outlook on life and your life experience is what then drives you when it comes to personal relationships between men and women.
So one of the things that you just mentioned is that you said that now women that are where you're from have that mentality. Was it
Yeah.
ever was it ever different, and when was it different?
I feel like it was, maybe in the 80s and 90s, women were maybe a little bit more subdued, a little bit more submissive, but they're certainly not like that now here.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And I actually had a couple of ministers on. I don't know if you watched the podcast yet or not, but I had a couple of ministers on, and one of the questions that arose was about submissiveness, and it was a lot of layers that were broken down, and a lot of different perspectives. It was, a biblical perspective. It was, the man's perspective. It was a lot of different perspectives, but with that being said, in London, right? You mentioned that women in the '80s and the '90s might have been a little bit more submissive. What does the what is your interpretation of being submissive, and as it relates to the spiritual order, meaning God being first and everything else falls under that? However, you frame that or define that. What is your take on, number one, what is your definition of being submissive, and does that still exist in London today?
My definition of being submissive, as you said, yes, God first, then the husband submits to God unto God, and then the wife submits unto her husband, recognizing that he is the leader of the home, he's the leader of the direction of their ministry as a couple, and then the children underneath that, in submission to the wife and the parents as a whole. So yes, I submit unto my husband, and then unto God. And that is God's order. There's no deviating away from that. However, the unsaved may not recognize that. And so therefore their submission or their lack of submission will be as a result of not recognizing what God's order is. And I would say that in the London, UK, there will be a lot of people who are in the world who don't recognize that order. And, so you have people saying, okay, I'm a boss, you know, I do what I like when I want to do it. They're running for their money, we're running to get the bag, to secure the bag. There's a high rise of entrepreneurial, patterns now in society and so on and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with securing the bag. We all want to be successful out here. We all have been given ideas and creative ideas from the Most High God, but there are some people that don't recognize that they need to be in submission to God in order to become the success that they've created, that He's created them to be. And so for them, there will be no accountability, there will be no submission. They're not submitted to anyone or anything. And so that's where we get the disparity in terms of order and submission.
Right, right. So that was great, and that honestly, that was probably one of the best breakdowns that I've heard. Not necessarily on this show, but I mean, and especially coming from a woman, you know what I mean? It was it. I mean, it's just a different perspective, but it's great. It's great. So
Okay.
so we were on a panel together during the
Yes.
Charlotte Black Film Festival, and you kind of stole the show a little bit.
No.
Well, I don't personally have a movie out yet, so obviously I was there to network and to, to meet individuals to potentially see if we could collaborate. And I think that we will do something in the future. But while we were on that panel, um, a lot of individuals had a lot of different questions for you,
Yes.
and I found you to be very interesting in the sense that, when we start having conversation, you were telling me, well, and maybe you weren't telling me directly, but um, some of the movie um, was about your personal experience.
Yes.
Is that true?
That's correct. Yes, it's based on some of my personal experiences. Yes, certainly. Episode one is it's a six-part series, so certainly episode one is based on, yes, my experiences.
Right. So when you were making the film, right, um, were there any moments that when you were actually watching the film or creating the film, were there any moments that, just made you reflect back to, those times or those moments that you were actually going through your own personal convictions? And meaning, just to get a little bit, more detail to it, like, sometimes we have triggers, right?
Yes.
And sometimes, depending on what those triggers are, it will bring certain emotions out of you. Were there any moments where you were triggered and, maybe you had to stop or maybe you had to cut film, or did it bring certain emotions out of you?
I would say yes. The first time I was triggered or felt the stirring up of emotions was when we had the very first table read with all the actors on Zoom, and every character in that moment came to life during that table read. And for me, that was a very pivotal moment because I'm the writer. I've written the script some years ago, and now finally everybody's in the room and everybody's character is popping up and coming to life. And this is before we've even started blocking. We haven't moved it, we haven't got up, stood up, walked around, there's no action, just the words off the page. And that was the first time that it stirred up any kind of emotions in me. That was the first time I was triggered. And then again, the church scene, which is a very powerful scene, that, the character Sherelle, she's at the altar and she's repenting for falling into sin, falling into sexual sin with the boyfriend. At that moment, that's another time where I was triggered. And my mum is one of the people in the congregation, my real biological mother. She's in the congregation whilst we were filming this, and she was even triggered by the character Sherelle. Now my mum's not in the TV and film world, so what she saw was her daughter at the altar. She didn't see the character at the altar. He saw her daughter, which was me, who plays the lead, and she was triggered by something. So it's very emotive, very, very emotive, very triggering. And those that have seen it have given me that same feedback. Oh my gosh, I saw myself. You were telling my story. And that is part of the reason why I now know God told me to write the story and actually to, make it into a series, because people are living these challenges day in, day out, and there's no representation of it, there's no discussion of it, it's just swept under the carpet. So many have said, I was Sherelle, I've been in that position, this speaks to me, this is wonderful. This is blessing me because now it's out there. My thoughts, my feelings are out there, and I know that I wasn't alone. That is what many people have said to me.
Wow, that's great, and interesting as well. I know we were having a discussion before we actually started filming, and um, when I saw the trailer, I was like, "This woman looks very familiar." I was like, "Is this you?" So, and you explained some of the distinctions you were able to, filter through as it relates to playing that character. But how was that actually, playing yourself, in the film? Like, it's one thing to be, the actual filmmaker and producer or and the writer, but it's another thing to actually be able to act in the film too as yourself. How are you able to do that?
By default.
Okay.
I say that because the Lord played a trick on me,
Uh huh.
actually. Um, I was actually hiring somebody else to
Hmm.
play the lead role, and at the last minute, due to personal experiences, personal life, uh, the young lady was unable to play the role, and it was literally 2 days before. And I said, Lord, what do you want me to do? Like, who is going to play this role? I can't suddenly just draft somebody in to play the role. And, you know, when we had the table read and everything, and it built up all these different emotions, and the other actors felt it also. Suddenly it was, you should play the role, you need to play this. And I went back to God and I said, Lord, if you want me to play this, you have to make it crystal clear. And the young lady said, no, there's no way, I can't do it. There's no way I'm going to be able to do it. And everything was set up, the location was paid for, ready, everybody was ready to go within the next 2 days. And in order for me to recast, do another audition, everything, it just wasn't feasible. And I said, okay, Lord, all right, I surrender. I will play the role. But I say the Lord played a trick on me because had I have known when I was writing that I would be stepping into the role to play myself, I probably wouldn't have been as open and transparent and honest as I was when I was writing it. So he had to deal with me that way. That at the very last minute, he said, actually, you are going to play yourself. And so, how was it for me? It was a little bit nerve wracking, especially when it did come to those intimate scenes, because that was the first time I'd been intimate on camera. However, it was all very professionally done. I did hire a intimacy coordinator who came in, had a discussion with myself and my co-star, and we put some boundaries and some parameters in place.
Right.
And the technicalities made sure that it worked well between the two characters. Yes. So yeah, exciting, overwhelming, nerve-wracking, but a wonderful time nevertheless.
Now, had you had prior acting experience?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'm
I
not
was a child
familiar.
actor.
Oh,
I've been
really?
acting since the age of 12.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So yes,
Oh, wow.
yes.
Okay.
And that's TV, film, and theatre stage plays as well.
Oh, wow. Tell the audience some of the things that you've been involved in, some of the shows that you've been in or movies.
So we have channels in the UK called ITV, BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation. I was in a very popular TV show called Grange Hill.
Okay.
Those that were born and bred in the UK will know Grange Hill.
Okay.
A children's children's school drama. It was a school drama.
Oh, wow.
And so I was in that. Then the BBC did another spin-off school drama, which I was a part of as well.
Okay.
I was in some ITV stuff, and various different stage plays as well.
Okay.
In some of the biggest theatres in London, in Theatreland, Haymarket Theatre's a big theatre in London. The Hackney Empire, where they stage a lot of black plays, which is another big, well-known theatre, and up and down the UK. So I am first known for my acting
Wow.
before becoming a writer and a hair and makeup artist in the industry.
That's amazing. I know we're going completely off script, but I'm just amused. I mean, and amazed by your depth. Um, how was the transition from being a child actor or star into adulthood, or being an adult actor? Like, I know there are obvious differences, but what are some of the challenges that you may have faced? Because I can tell you in the States, some of the child stars, when they get older, when they grow up, they've probably seen and experienced so much, and
Yes.
they've dealt with so much trauma, they can't cope as adults. So how has that transition been for you? Has it been a challenging one? Has it been difficult? And how have you maintained? Because if I were to compare, you as an adult to some of the child actors that became adults here, it's almost night and day. Like, you seem to be very well put together. How have you managed that?
Well, thank you, Eli. For me, I've always remained grounded. I've always remembered, where I'm coming from. I've never allowed, stardom to get to my head. And I also stepped out of it for a while as well. I stepped away from the industry in some respects, went off and did, 9 to 5 jobs and kept myself grounded. But I've always had a love for, TV, film, theatre industry. I've always had a love for being on stage. From that very young age, I always knew that once I was on stage or in front of the camera, something would click in me and I would feel very much alive.
Right.
And I believe I'm a storyteller at heart. So transitioning into adulthood, for me, it was just a case of, okay, well, this is my passion. This has been my passion. When I was younger, my parents were behind me in it. And now the motivating force is how I know it makes me feel. And also because now, being a Christian as well as an adult, I now know that this is a gift that God has given me in order for me to spread the good news. My writing as well encompasses that. My writing is a lot of speaking the word within my creativity. And so I know that I have a job to do, not unto myself, but unto God. And so that's how I keep myself fresh and vibrant and, ready to perform and excel in these industries.
That's great. I had a couple of thoughts. I don't know if I should tailor this for another conversation, but you're very interesting, and the more that I discover, the more I really want to know. So a couple of more questions. So, and I don't want to stay on this subject long, but I am intrigued. So, do your fans, still recognize you from when you were a child star, or is that a crazy question?
He says friends. I think those that know that I was acting yes, they know who I am.
Okay.
People I went to school with, when they see on social media that I'm doing anything now, they remember
Okay.
because they were a part of that journey.
I mean,
You
you
know,
mentioned that it was a very popular show.
it
That's why
was
I asked.
it was a popular show, and I was, I had to take time off school sometimes to go and shoot, and then I'd come back to school and be this normal girl again in the playground, on the playground, in the classes and whatever. And people would come up to me and say, "Oh my gosh, we saw you," and blah blah blah. But I always remained grounded. That's I'm a vibrant, flamboyant person, but I'm also very a grounded person.
Yeah, I noticed
Um,
that when you were here in the States. Well, here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Very much so.
yeah,
Very much so. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I don't let it go to my head.
okay.
Whatever success or fame or you know notoriety, to me, that I'm just a person just like the next person, you know and so that success for me is unto God, and I give all praise to the Most High for anything that I achieve in my life.
Right.
And I just enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride.
Right. So was your book written first before the movie?
Yes,
It was?
yes,
Okay.
yes,
And the reason
yes.
why I ask is because um, I probably was backwards in terms of how I brought these products out. So I executive produced a stage play. Obviously, it was If You Cook Out Clean. The book
Yeah.
was supposed to be out prior to, but for whatever reasons, it just didn't happen that way. And honestly, I'm glad it didn't because um, I think one project just fueled the other. When the play, came out, it really fueled me to get that book written and get it done. And I heard you mention that you actually published in 2017, but for me, it was years of just an internal battle, thinking am I good enough? Or is this good
Mm,
enough? Will this work? But
yes,
there's one thing when you truly get something from God, He's not worried about all those particulars. We're worried about it. He
that's
tells
right.
he tells us to do something. He tells us to move according to His purpose, not
That's right.
not our. Oh, I know a little bit now. Don't get it twisted.
That's
but
it.
but
Mm.
He tells us to move according to His purpose, and He doesn't want us to worry about certain things. And I was probably in my own way for years. He had already birthed me with the name. He had already birthed me with all the tools that was necessary to make the project a success. I just wasn't doing the work.
And
But
that's what it is.
right,
Yeah. We have to get out of our own way so that God can enable us to proceed.
right,
We listen and we take one step forward. He will light the pathway so that we can keep going. He will provide. If He's asked us to do something, He will make the way.
right,
Absolutely.
right. And one of the things that I realized through this whole process is you can wait on, this big, granular, magical moment to appear. It's not coming.
Mm,
It's not coming because let me explain a little bit further. Because ultimately, your success, right? Obviously, God drives everything, right? He's the driver, right? But a lot of your success, right, is fueled by your work and your work alone. I have had situations where I believe more in other people, if that makes sense, than I may even believe in myself. And I'm thinking in certain instances, someone who's making all these promises to help me, it never happens. So
Mm.
I had to determine for myself what is it that I need to do, because he's already given me everything that I need. What is it that
That's
I
right.
need to do to be able to make this a success? Because
Yes.
and I know we connected, you know, for a reason, and I know, you know, it was orchestrated by God, right?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Absolutely. I'm not denying that. And a lot of times, when you have nothing to compare somebody to, when you don't know their history, when you don't know their background, a lot of times it's easy to connect with that person because you're not meeting that person from a prejudice lens, right?
That's right.
And
That's right.
sometimes, not every time, sometimes a stranger, right, will come into your life and they're able to help boost your career more than somebody you've known your
That's it.
your
That's
entire
it.
your entire life. But ultimately, your success is determined by the work that you do. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Absolutely. We
It
have to put the work in. We have to put the work in. You know, we plant the seeds, you know, and water it as best we can, and then God brings the increase.
right,
So, you know, we make the first move. He's given us an idea. We make the first move, and then He will connect you with the right people who you're supposed to be. You know, you
absolutely.
mentioned about, you know, somebody over here telling you, oh, I'll do this, and they don't come through. Well, move forward anyway,
Mm-hmm.
because maybe that person wasn't the right person for what God has for you to do,
Right,
but He will make the way. He will connect the dots for you. But we just have to step out in faith.
right. And I may have time for another question. I know it's late there, and we do appreciate you actually staying
Thank
up with
you.
us tonight.
It's a pleasure.
Absolutely, we appreciate you so much for joining us today. So one more question. Um, when you were converting, if this is the term, right, and it may not be, correct me if I'm wrong, that book into a film, what were some of the challenges that you faced? And did you find it to be, um, did you find it to be an easy transition because you already knew exactly how you wanted to orchestrate the film? So two questions. One, were there any challenges? And I know it was, but I just want to hear, you know, your story. And being that you were already familiar with, you know, everything, and you knew how you wanted to orchestrate everything, what was that easy for you?
Uh, Initially, it wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about, you know, us getting out of our own way. I was standing in my way of making it a script. I was afraid because obviously I've been around script work. I've, you know, been in workshops. I've been a part of improvising and making scripts, but never my very own project. And so it took me a while to actually say, right, I'm going to sit down in front of a computer and I'm going to make this book into a script. Once I got over that, and that probably took me about a year or so. So, as I said, the book was published 2017. I completed the script. the rough draft around about 2019, beginning of 2019, and I put it down for about a year. So this is me in my way again. I put it down, and then I said, no, let me go back to that. When God's giving you something to do, He won't let you rest until you execute what He's told you to do. That's how you know it's from God as well. So when I put it down, I knew I had to pick it back up again at some point, and so I picked it back up, and then I did start to send it to a few directors and share it with them, and I got some very hard feedback, and that was hard. It was hard to hear. It was very difficult to hear that feedback because I thought it was a work of art, but to some producers, directors, it was actually, well, you'll need to work on this bit, and you'll need to enhance that bit, and what's her backstory, what's her story, how did she get to this point in her life. So then you have to go back and you have to start thinking about, okay, what's her motivation for behaving the way in which she behaves now, and how to convey that in a script. So how do we see that in her action when she is, when she's confronted with this situation, when she's having to now relay that to her boyfriend? How are you going to convey that in a script? And so it's all those things that come to mind. As a writer, you know how you want things to look. When I'm writing, I see it in my mind, and I wanted to take the actors on that journey with me so that they would know exactly how to convey the character once we had done auditions and things like that. So those were my first challenges, and once I overcame them, then it was fine. It was plain sailing. Actually, getting in front of the camera, that part was the easy part. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. We once again, I know it's late there. We appreciate you staying up this late for us. We don't take it for granted, and we will certainly have you back. But I just want to remind you of a conversation that we had back when you were in the States. You promised me that you will fly my whole team out to London so we can work on the project together. So I'm gonna hold you to that, and I'm just kidding. But hopefully we can collaborate and maybe do some things in the future. I would love to
Yes.
maybe come there and maybe do a project or two together someday if possible.
I believe.
Yeah.
I believe we will.
Okay.
We will. We're gonna make that happen.
Okay. Are you
Definitely.
sure? Because you're speaking those words out of your mouth,
And
we
speaking, the Bible says,
we don't want it to come back
be
void.
not as though it were, right?
Okay.
So we're speaking it into being.
Okay.
It's gonna happen.
Okay. Sounds good.
We're gonna work together.
Guys, you heard her. She's flying our whole team out to London very soon, so we can work on a project together. So hopefully, guys, you've found this to be insightful. Hopefully, you found her to be as intriguing as I did. I believe that Kadine is definitely bound for greatness. I believe that she will do wonderful and marvelous things, and I know, even though she has a track record and she was a child star, I think God definitely has much more in store for her. I think she's going to be she's going to be great, and we're glad that we have the opportunity to even to be in the same presence, to be a part of your story. And we know that ultimately God predestines everything for us, and I know that even in this moment it was predestined. And I know that ultimately we're we're going to get to where He desires us to be at some point in time in our life. And I may didn't frame that the best way, but I know that He's working, and I know that He's working on something, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So, guys, thank you for joining the If You Cook, I'll Clean podcast. And once again, we'll see you soon for the next episode. And thank you, Kadine, again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an awesome, wonderful pleasure to be a part of If You Cook, I'll Clean podcast. And I look forward to many, many, many more works for you and I to do together. And yes, let's make it happen. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I know how I get when everything's on